and jump right in. So I know we do have at least one or two new folks. So let me introduce myself. I'm Eric Sukup with Sage Method. We are the implementation partner for UCB. So Oracle doesn't necessarily do all of their implementations. This is an Oracle product that we'll be seeing. And we were involved in the setup and configuration to meet the requirements of UCB for the system. Now, what is Unifier? It's a project management information system, and based on the various business processes that we've configured for UCB, this will be for managing your construction projects, both from a cost management perspective and also from a delivery perspective. So not only agreements, amendments, change orders, and the like, but also RFIs, submittals, architect supplemental instructions. There's quite a long list of business processes that we've rolled out. I think we've been live since about January, but I know because of events in 2020, not everybody has gotten all of their projects in Unifier, and we're still managing some projects in Famous. So hopefully we'll be moving forward as we go, and you'll be in the system more. Unifier is a web-based system, so you can access it anywhere that you can get to the internet from any modern browser. One place I wanted to start for today is UCB's facilities management site. On here, you will find links for Unifier. You will see two, one for production and one for training. Production is the live environment where we've got live projects and we're putting in real data. We also have a separate training environment that we'll be looking at today, which allows us to create projects and play around without breaking anything or ruining anyone's project. Now, I believe everybody on the invite for today has already been set up with a Unifier login. We do not manage, we as in Sage Method don't manage the creation of user accounts because it is tied in with your campus username and identity. And so that's handled in-house. If anybody has any issues, feel free to reach out to us and we can get you the contact there if you have any troubles logging in. But it's just like you're logging into your computer. Also on this page are two important links here, the option to provide suggestions, which I know some of you already have. Because Unifier is a configurable system, that means we can make adjustments as we go and make it better as we learn what works and what doesn't work. That all goes through a change management process internally with UCB to determine what's going to provide the most value based on the level of effort to make that happen. So there's a review process. If something's really important to you, the best I can suggest is that you elaborate in those suggestions as much as you can. There's also report an issue. This is to report any problems you're having using the system. So if you've got something that you know how it works and you think it would work better in a different way, that's a suggestion. If something just doesn't seem to be working at all, you can report an issue. If you need some kind of one-on-one training, some project-specific training, you can reach out to us by email at training@SageMethod, and we can set up a time to meet with you on Zoom for a little bit more of a personalized session. For today, you can just follow along on my screen. If you feel comfortable and you have two monitors, I'm not going to discourage trying to replicate what I'm doing on the screen, but I don't want folks to get left behind. So whatever's more comfortable for you today that you feel you can keep up with. In other sessions, when we get into the meat of actually how to, create a contract, enter RFIs, that sort of thing, that will definitely be more of a follow along as I'm doing the training. But for today, it's a little bit less critical. So when you first click on the training login page, it's going to take you to, okay, so I've already logged in, but this will take you to your typical CU Boulder portal page to enter your identity key and password. Since I'm not a UCB employee or student, I don't have one. So for me, it goes right to the landing portal after I get a different login. The first time you log in, you're going to have this little notification banner to accept cookies. Just go ahead and hit got it, and then you shouldn't see that again unless you clear your browser history and cache. You might see that again. So like I said, this is the landing portal. It's got links to a lot of things, but the most important one here is the big purple U. This will launch Unifier. Chances are when you log in, you won't see as much as I do. I'm logged in as an administrator, so I have a lot of access. But I'm going to go ahead and click on the purple U to launch Unifier. And then I'm going to just close this and go to a specific spot. Because the first time you log in, chances are you're going to come to a screen like this. Now, unless you come back here and log out, you won't see this screen the next time you log in. Unifier remembers where you were in the system every time you log out. So that when you log back in, it will take you right there. So whether that's a project or if you're entering RFIs in a particular project, it should take you right back. Again, unless you clear your browser history and cache, and then it doesn't remember. So that is, if you log in once and you come back to here, that might be the case. Before I get around too much into navigating into any of the specifics here, and I did see a note in chat, Lainey, so I'll let you respond to that. Oh, I see, from Marnie. Thank you. Good note. Chrome is the preferred browser. Thank you, Marnie. And that is still true. So technically, if you ask Oracle, it's compatible with any modern browser. But based on our experience using it, Chrome has the fewest bugs and issues. So it is the preferred browser. It also makes support easier for us if you're running into an issue, everybody's using the same browser. We don't run into browser specific issues that can be kind of an issue to troubleshoot them. I know for certain there's a few things that just don't load correctly on Internet Explorer. And Firefox seems to work fairly well, but Chrome is definitely the preferred browser. Okay. So the first place I'm going to go is preferences. For those of you that have been in the system, this isn't going to be new or exciting, but for those of you who are new, this is something you'll definitely want to do the first time you log in or shortly thereafter, is set your preferences. So in the upper right hand here, you'll see your name. If you click on your name, you'll get a little drop down. There's a link to the mobile app, which is not being used right now. We don't have any of the business processes currently configured for mobile, although we are looking at that for the future. Preferences, which I'll go to in a minute. If you are set up as anyone's proxy, which I'll explain later. And then also you can sign out. And we always recommend safe sign out hygiene. So anytime you are done with your session, it is recommended that you sign out of Unifier and close the browser. especially if you're in a public place, just more for a security perspective. We deal with a lot of sometimes sensitive information, so it's just good practice. If you're at home and your computer isn't leaving the house for a while, it isn't as big of an issue. So I'm going to go ahead and click on preferences. The first page is just a general page. This is all information that is based on what was loaded about you when your account was created, and that should kind of match the directory. It'll be a little bit different for me since I'm not in your directory. You can also upload a photo of yourself if you want or not. It appears certain places, and it's certainly not critical, but you've got that option. You'll see a few tabs across the top. The second one is email subscription. So the default options, I think I've got selected here already. But this is going to decide what will result in an email from the system to you. There's a lot of different things that will kick off an email. Most of them are when you get a task. So if someone sends you an RFI for review, sends you an agreement for approval, you'll get a task in Unifier. You'll also get an email reminder of that task. There is this option here to send notifications in a single daily digest, which will help cut down on the number of emails. However, we don't recommend that you use that because it tends to be sent out at the end of the day. So if you get a task in the morning, there's a chance that you won't see it until the next day. And if it's a high priority task and nobody notifies you outside of the system, there's a chance that you just won't know about it for a full day. Or if it's over the weekend, you might not see it till you check your email on Monday. That said, it can result in a lot of emails. So one thing I like to do is set up an Outlook rule so that all my Unifier emails go to a folder. We recently updated all of the email subject lines to include the project name and number. So if you get real fancy, you can create rules to actually dump all of your task notifications into project-specific folders in your Outlook. And we can certainly help you with that, and so can IoT or OIT as well. Region format should default to Mountain Time. It may be Pacific if you're new, if something got messed up. So if the dates or if the hours all seem off by an hour, check your time zone and preferences. This is also how you set your format. So depending on your region, most people won't change this, but if you want to see your negatives in a parentheses versus a minus, you can change that. Some people like to see their date format in year, month, day. That's definitely an option here to select. Next, I'm going to go to the proxy tab. So what's a proxy? A proxy allows you to act on someone else's behalf in Unifier. That also includes getting their emails, so which we've definitely seen. That's another thing you can do when you set up your Outlook rules. If you want all of those proxy emails to go to a separate folder, you can do that as well. I think we sent out an email on that previously, but feel free to email us if you want instructions on setting that up at all. So in order to be someone's proxy, they have to set you up as their proxy, meaning you have to grant permission to act on your behalf. So right now in the training environment, Ariane, who's actually still inactive, is the only one who can act as my proxy. I can grant access to others. Sorry, I moved a little fast there. So again, I'm in the proxy tab under my proxy. And if I click on the plus button, I can add a new proxy. I can just type their name to search. Or as you'll see quite often in Unifier, not only can you search here in the bar, but there's also a little select button that opens up a list to pick from, which you can then scroll through and find who you're looking for. Or there's usually on any select pick list a search and a find on page. Find on page lets you search through the columns, which tends to be the fastest. So if I wanted to set Lainey up as my proxy, I can just start typing her name. As soon as she comes up, I can select her by highlighting her name and then clicking select. If I selected the wrong person, I can hit this little X here to clear her out. And just so you can see it both ways, I can also just start typing her name in here as well. If you ever start typing something and nothing comes up, sometimes just hitting delete and then continuing on will kind of kick it off going. If for whatever reason it's just not popping up, that seems to be a good trick to get that going again. You'll notice there's a start and end date and time. If you leave that empty, Lainey will always be able to log in as me, as my proxy. But I can set her to inactive. So if I want to control that manually, I can just change the status here. Or I can set a specific date and time. So depending on the use case, if you're working on a team, the PC needs to be able to proxy in as the PM or vice versa. You might want to leave this open, but if someone's covering for you on vacation, then you can set a specific start date and time. Okay, I see a chat question. Can you be a proxy on a specific process versus everything? So when you set someone up as your proxy, you have their same access, and there's no way to limit that to a specific process. I'll show you what that looks like in a minute. But when you log in as someone's proxy, you can see everything that they can see, and you also have access to all the same tasks. There's not currently a way to limit that at all. Oh, thanks, Lori. So I hit OK, and now I see Lainey listed here. If for whatever reason I don't want her to be my proxy anymore, I can double click to open her back up and then select inactive. Or I can also delete or remove. If you want to know who has set you up as their proxy, so right now this is who can log in as my proxy, but I also have people have granted access for me to allow me to log in on their behalf. I can go to the I am proxy tab and see everybody who has either set me up as their proxy or I've done so for troubleshooting purposes as an administrator. So for users, it's a granted permission, but as admins, we can set ourselves up as proxy to help troubleshoot issues. And so you may see myself or B or the cloud admin account as your proxy. And typically that's what that's for, is from a support perspective. If you want, and you see them listed here, you can always remove them, and if we need to do it again, we can just set that up. Proxy login history will show who has logged in as your proxy, date and time. In this particular, in the training environment, only Ariane is logged in as my proxy once, but over time you'll see this list grow. Every time someone logs in as your proxy, it will log when they logged in and when they logged out. Okay, and this is the one place where you're also going to want to use the apply button. Now, there's a few different places in Unifier where you'll see in the bottom there's like an apply and an OK. and sometimes just hitting OK will have the same effect, but especially here and in most places, I would always recommend hitting apply before OK. But this is definitely one place where if you don't hit apply, it will not save your proxy. Okay. The last tab here is more. You shouldn't really need to change anything here. This is related to how Unifier will show you documents. And the default viewer is the Unifier viewer, which means it will open a document in Unifier. And if you want to open it in the native application, you would just have to download the file. Sorry, I'm just noticing on the chat there's a question about making a proxy specific to a project. So when you set someone up as, and then just to clarify, when you set someone up as your proxy, they can access your projects and they'll have the same access as you do in those projects. You can't limit it to any certain project. So if you're the project manager for 5 projects and you set me up as your proxy, I will have that same access for all 5 projects if I log in as your proxy. I'm going to hit OK on preferences. And I'm going to go back up and click on my name. And now I'm going to go back to proxy 4. So anybody who has listed me as their proxy, or I did so as the admin, will be listed here. And then from this menu, I can log in as them. So I'm going to log in as Catherine Dunklau just to show you what happens. When I do that, my name up here in the upper right changes, and now it is saying that I am proxy for Catherine Ann Dunklau, and it's just like logging in as Catherine. The only difference is that she can control when I can and can't, and also everything that's tracked in the system from an audit perspective will show that I did it on her behalf. So it won't look like she did it on her own. It will capture that I did it as her proxy. Now when I log in as Catherine, it's just like I'm as Catherine, so I lose all of my access. So anything that I would have access as Eric, I would only have access to that if Catherine did as well, until I log out as her proxy by simply clicking on the name and clicking sign out. This signs out of the proxy and returns me to my account. If I click sign out again, which I will not do, but if I did, this logs me out of Unifier completely. So it's kind of the difference with the sign out. Okay, so that's it for preferences. Right now we're on the home tab, so I'm going to get a little bit into navigation now. This is the home tab. So Unifier has tabbed browsing, which means we can have different things open across the top. And typically that is projects that we have open. We can have as many projects open as we want to switch between projects. And in much like tab browsing in your browser, you can open and close those without any real impact. So you're not going to lose anything as long as you had sent it along. And you can always open tabs back up. The home tab is your home for everything in the system. So if you open up projects in a tab and then you go into that project, you're only going to see your tasks and your information for that individual project. On the home tab, you're seeing tasks across all of your projects. And so on the right here, I'm seeing all of the tasks I have in these particular projects. So looks like I've got, and I'm late for a design review in my emergency response centers project. But this will only list projects that you have tasks for. This is not going to list all of your projects. This pie chart and bar chart down below is just a different representation of the same information. How many tasks do you have? What is their status? And then down below, in which project is that task? From here, I could click on a project, and that will actually open up that project in a new tab. There's a number of different ways to navigate, so I'll show a couple of those. Here, so if I click on this multi-response centers, it opens the project in a new tab, and it takes me right to my tasks. So that's another thing to point out from a navigation perspective. It's typically you'll have your projects will be tabs, and then within a project, what are my tasks? What are my RFIs? What are my change orders? That will all be listed on the left in the left-hand navigation menu. These are grouped into different folders by kind of concept. So if I open up budget and funding management, I'm gonna be able to access my funding requests, my budget, my cost sheet, cash flow, etc. Right now, my tasks is highlighted in this dark gray, so I know that that's what I'm looking at. It also tells me in the upper right here. This task list shows me all tasks that are assigned to me only in this project. Now, that's one way to open up a project. Chances are you're not going to use that very often. You can also simply click the plus sign up here to open a new tab. And that's going to bring up a search bar to allow you to search for any project that you have been added to. So it's one thing to note here is you can, when you search for a project, if it doesn't come up, it might not be that it doesn't exist, but that maybe you haven't been added to that project for whatever reason. And you can go ahead and use that issues button on the facilities management page. Or if you know the project coordinator for the project, you can contact them to help get you in the project. But before I search, I'm going to show a couple of things here. So recent locations will always list projects that you've recently opened. You can also set bookmarks. So that's handy if you've got maybe a dozen or so or fewer projects that you're always going to. You can just create bookmarks just like your browser. Key locations will always list company workspace and UCB. I'll explain what those are in a bit, but for most people, the majority of your work is going to be within a project. There's just a couple of things that go on in company workspace, like the request applications to request a new project to be created. I can search by name or number. So any part of the project name or project number, and that's the Unifier project number. All of the Unifier project numbers start with UCB. If you search for UCB now, you'll probably only come up with one or two results because we've only added you to one training project, unless we didn't inactivate the old one. I can also search by the project name. So if I search multi, I can see my multi projects. And then there's also this green button over here. If you click that, this kind of pops out that search menu. This is handy if you want to see all of your projects. You can resize this. It starts kind of small. And then if you change this type from all to projects, you shouldn't see project standards, but if you do, it's just the regular projects. Do not just ignore the standard. And then this will list all of the projects that you have been added to. And then you can see some of the information about it. So what's the project number, project name. I believe we will be resorting these columns. I know there's some columns in the front that don't really help you find a project at all. And nobody really cares about the template name. So that is on our list of improvements. But as I scroll to the right, you can see more information like the famous project number, the PM, the PC, the planner, and if there was a famous CP number in there as well. And then from here, I can double click or highlight one and hit select. It has the same effect, and that will open it in a new tab. I can switch between tabs. I don't lose anything. If I close this, it shows up under my recent locations, and it's very easy to open that back up in a new tab. As I mentioned earlier, you can have as many tabs open as you want, but there's a limit on what's manageable, because after a while it will go wider than the screen and you have to scroll over to find their projects. Now I also mentioned you can set bookmarks. So on the top here, you'll see this little star, and if you hover over it, it says bookmarks. This will basically just save where you're at, not only the project, but what you're looking at. So if I bookmark this upgrade refrigeration system here, and you can also rename that. But as I scroll to the right, you'll see it lists the project name and number, and at the very right, home. So that means not it's going to this project, but it's going to start you at the home. I could also go into communication management, RFIs, and once the RFI log loads here, if I set a bookmark here, now it's setting it for the RFIs. So just be aware of that. It's not only going to take you to the project, but also the specific place in the project. And then using the little gear icon, you can delete these or rearrange them. You can even set a default. So if there's a project you're spending most of your time on, and you always want to be taken right there, along with just logging out from there, you can also set it as your default, which means every time you log in, that's where it's going to go to, regardless of where you logged out from. All right. So again, from a navigation perspective, your projects are along the top, and then the information within the project. So the various business processes are located on the left. For those of you who are new to Unifier, business process is a term you'll hear us say quite frequently. We will abbreviate that to just BP, which stands for business process. And that just means anything with a form and workflow. So whether that's an RFI or a submittal, and we'll take a closer look at an RFI as an example here in a minute. The first place I want to start as an example within a project is tasks. So there is a grouping here called Task Manager. Within there are your tasks. Also any drafts. So if you, let's say you create an RFI and before you send it off for someone else to look at and you just save it, it will be listed in your drafts, and that's where you'll find it. If you have old drafts you want to get rid of, you can delete those. E-signatures I'm not going to cover in this session, but we will cover it in the intermediate basics. So perhaps something to look forward to. In the tasks menu, as I mentioned earlier, this shows me all of my tasks for this project. Now that's not necessarily everything that you need to do for the project. This is specific to a workflow task in Unifier, meaning someone sent you a design review in Unifier to review, someone sent you a punch list, a change order proposal, etc. You can create tasks from here, but it can be a little bit confusing because you have to select the business process. So typically we're not initiating business processes from the task log. One thing that might be useful is to maybe launch an action item from here. If you just want to send a task to somebody quick to do something, or send a task to yourself as a reminder. Now tasks will stay here until you've taken action on them. Once you've taken action on them, they will go away. I'll open up this change order proposal as an example. So I did that a little quick. So you'll see when I hover over the record number, and everything in Unifier gets a record number. It's just Unifier's way of identifying it. It may not necessarily be the COP number or the amendment number, and so we typically have a separate field for that. In this case, this is change order proposal number 70, not number 7. This is just Unifier's sequential numbering. When I hover that, that turns into a hyperlink, and I can just click it once to launch it. Otherwise, I can click anywhere on this row, and if I double click, it will launch it. So if you click it once and nothing's happening, that means you just haven't clicked on the record number, or you need to double click. From here, I can accept this task and take action on it. You will see this decline, but we haven't given anybody permission to decline tasks in any of the business processes yet. Whenever you get a task, and I know this will just become muscle memory, but at first it is a bit of a hurdle. You can't do anything with this task until you hit accept. So you may open a task and be like, why is everything read-only? I can't change anything. You have to hit accept task. Now, this by clicking on it, it also shows a preview to the right. And again, this particular change order proposal was number 7. Now, change order proposal, the actual business process, so where we'd actually create a COP, is located under change management, change order proposal. And I just want to explain the difference quickly here between the task view that we saw and this view. So when I go to change order proposals, I'm seeing all change order proposals in this project that have been entered in Unifier, regardless of its status. In tasks, I'm only going to see the change order proposals that have been sent to me to do something specific. So here in my change order proposals log, I see the same COP number 7. I can open this record from here and take action on it as well. So when this loads, you'll see I'll have the option up here to accept the task. So just know that what the difference is here. The business process log will show everything regardless of who it's with, what its status is. Tasks will only show you what's been assigned to you. But if you're in the business process log and you know which one is currently with you to do something, you can just open it directly and accept that task and take action with it. Okay, so what is a business process in a little bit more detail? I'm going to use an RFI as an example, but I'm going to do it in a different project here. So I also have a project in here called training. This is just my project that I've created for the September trainings. When I go to this project, again, this left-hand menu here is going to look the same, and that's because I have the same role in both of these projects. Most of you will have the same role in all of your projects, but there are some folks who might have a specific role in one or two projects, and then maybe kind of a view-only role in others, depending on what they need to see. So if your role is different in a project, your access will reflect that. Under communication management, we see a couple of business processes. I'm not going to go through all the business processes because we don't have the time, unfortunately. But also we have specific training for these other business processes. So I'm going to use RFI as an example, just because it's got a more simple workflow. So when I go to my RFI log, I see there already have been 3 RFIs on this project. If I want to log a new RFI, so this might be as the contractor, or because we don't have vendors in the system yet, because of events in 2020, our timeline on that has been delayed. So until then, we have project users entering those on the contractor's behalf. In either case, click Create, and it will pull up a entry form. I can resize this window if I need more room to see. I can maximize it. On my left-hand menu, I'm going to see the form. Anything that's gray is read-only. If it's grayed out, stay out. Anything that's white, I can click in and type. As soon as I click into a field, it will tell you any character restrictions. And you can use the tab button to tab between fields, but just note that it goes over, down, over, down, over, down. So that's kind of the sequence that goes between the different fields. Anything with a red asterisk is a required field, which means before I can send this on to anyone else, I need to fill these fields out. If I don't, I can still save it as a draft, but it will remain a draft until I fill out all required fields. Most forms are organized into blocks. So in pretty much every BP, you'll see this project information block. First, all blocks are numbered. So you'll see 00 project information, 01 vendor information, 02 RFI question. These are also collapsible. So if you need a little bit more screen real estate, you can collapse the blocks. So I'm going to go ahead and fill out some of the information here. Vendor RF, I'm not going to go through all of the fields because we do have a specific RFI training. So I'm just going to go ahead and fill in my required information. So I can show you, so I can send this into workflow and show you a little bit more information here. Put in my question, a brief description. Now this will all these fields will be different based on the business process. So we're going to ask you for different information if it's a submittal or an amendment or a change order proposal. Okay. So I filled out all the required information. If I hadn't, so let's say I forgot to put in this email, it's going to remind me because I already entered a value. If I try to hit send, it's also going to list it here. Also, if there's any issues with validation, meaning like if you tried to enter a date in the past for the substantial completion when you're putting in an agreement, those will be listed here as well. Unfortunately, you can't resize this box. So to see the whole message, sometimes you have to hover over it. to see the full message of the error. So one of these, it's telling me that the required date has to be at least 5 working days out from today. So I'm going to go ahead and put an email back in there. I'm going to change my required date further in the future. And I forgot to answer another required question. All right. All business processes in Unifier allow you to attach documents. At some point in the workflow, typically at the end of the workflow, so when something is approved or rejected, those attachments get deposited into the document manager in Unifier, which is covered in a different session. And those documents in Unifier, we have a Unifier to Meridian integration so that those documents will transfer over to Meridian, I believe, nightly. When I click the down button, I can browse. So 9 times out of 10, you're just going to use this browse, which will allow you to attach something from your computer. You can also attach something that's already in the document manager. I'm going to go ahead and hit browse. I see there's a question on the Meridian integration. I believe they're really close to turning on the file sync, but we're not doing that integration, but we can get an update from Aaron and communicate that. But I do believe they've been working with the Meridian vendor and are close to turning that on. So when I click browse, I get this browse window. I can hit browse to pull up a little file explorer where I can search for something on my computer. I can also drag and drop. So if I have a window open here, I know some of you have, and I'm not sure what it's called, but you can kind of open up your Meridian files in a similar view. And similarly, you can drag and drop those files in. If you got the wrong one, you can just use the button to delete it. Don't worry about the advanced options. Those are defaulted and don't need to worry about those. Let's see here. Let's just put that on there. No file restrictions for attachments. I think the only thing that might give you an error is if you try to put like an install file, like something that's executable to install a program, but DWGs, RFI, PDFs, Revit files, they're all compatible. You can upload multiple files at once, and then they'll be shown here. There's a couple more tabs I'm going to go through here in a minute. But I'm going to go ahead and send this on into workflow first. Some business processes, you'll see multiple tabs at the top. So you'll always start on the first tab, which is your main form. If the business process allows line items, so for example, a contract will have the main contract information, like the overall amount, some of the terms and conditions, the substantial completion, but then the individual contract line items will be in a line item type view. So similarly here, you can add line items. Again, there's a specific RFI training, so I'm not going to go into it here, but just be aware that there can be multiple tabs. The first tab will always just be a form. The other tabs will be line items. To send something into workflow, you always have to hit send. If I hit save, I'll just go ahead and do that. It saves a draft. I can close this. I will not see it in my RFI log because I have not sent it into workflow yet. It hasn't been assigned a number in the system. So the only place I will see it is under Task Manager Drafts, which I showed earlier. So I can open up that RFI from here and continue on. Most business processes have workflow, which means it has a specific workflow it needs to go through for review or approval. I'm gonna go ahead and click send. And then based on the business process, I'm either gonna have the ability to select my workflow action. This is really just where it's going to next. Most business processes from a create perspective, it's always just submit and it goes into another step. Sometimes they'll have multiple options. If this was at a review step, I might have the option to approve it or to decline it or to send it back for revision. So that will change. And then based on the workflow, who it gets sent to and whether that's pre-assigned or user selected will change as well. So right now, with this submit selected, I've got names here. I don't have any button to add anybody, so it's all pre-set up based on who's in this project and what group they're in. Some business processes or at certain points in the workflow will not put a name in the to, and you'll actually select who it goes to. But that is workflow dependent. If there is any sort of task due date, and most business processes in Unifier do not have one, but if there are specific due dates for certain steps in the workflow, in this case, the review step has a 1-day task duration, it will tell you when it's due. So I'm going to go ahead and send this. This is actually going to myself and Lori. So after I send it, I will not only see it in my RFI log, I will also see it in my tasks because I sent it to myself as a possible reviewer. So again, I can open the same RFI 4 from either location, doesn't matter. I can still take action on it. In the task log, it does show that task due date. And then once you open up that, it will show the task due date here. Just know that once you hit accept, the task due date does disappear, which is not ideal, but that's an enhancement request for Oracle. All right, so I want to go through some of these tabs at the top here. We've already talked about attachments. One more thing about attachments is you can actually make comments on attachments. Not all business processes will have attachments, so you won't always have an attachment to comment on, or your comment might not be specific to one file, but to this RFI in general. So there is a comments tab that will allow you to log a comment. You can also add an attachment to a comment if you want. So if you had a question or a comment and had some sort of supporting drawing or sketch, you could attach it here in the same way as we attached it to the attachment tab, and then hit post. Now, I can add a comment because this has been sent to me. It's in my court. I'm taking action on this task. You won't always be able to add comments depending on where something is in the workflow. But because it's an active task, I can actually click this, right click on the pencil to make any changes or remove the comment if I want to. As soon as comments are added, a little speech bubble pops up. So anytime you open a record and you see a speech bubble on a tab, you know that there's comments. Likewise with attachments, a paperclip icon shows. Linked records, don't worry about, we're not really using that. Neither with linked mail. Workflow progress is the biggie, because this will help you understand where in the world this RFI is. And it did not load for me for some reason. I'm just going to go ahead and hit save. This shouldn't happen very often, but like any system, things can happen. So one thing you can always do is just try closing the record and opening it back up. You can also resize this window by hovering over the divider. Don't use the 3 buttons to change this. This just collapses or opens it. So I know a lot of people want to go there to try to resize it, but by clicking it, it collapses it. So I usually recommend just hovering over until you see that double arrow. Then there's also this little expand button to take up the whole thing. And when you do that in the attachments, it also shows the preview. But I'm going to go to workflow progress because this will help you determine where it is in the workflow and also the history. So right now it's showing me all of the visited steps in the workflow. So we've already visited creation. I created it. I completed that creation by selecting the submit action and sending it on this date and time. From there, it went to the review step. You'll see review listed twice because it went to 2 people, to Lori and to myself. Because this is a single approval step, as soon as I accept that task, it locks everyone else out. There are certain steps that are consensus, which will allow multiple people to take action at the same time. But those are typically limited to review where people are making markups and comments on attachments. That way people don't save over their form information. And so that's why it shows her as locked and myself is in progress because I hit accept task. In this menu in the upper right, there's also this undo accept task. So if I wanted Lori to look at it, I accidentally accepted it, I could just hit undo accept task. Also in here is the view graphic, which will show you a graphical representation of the workflow with the current step highlighted in yellow, which depending on your monitor can be kind of hard to determine. But this just shows you where this record can go. So from the review step, I could send it for review and comment. I could say no additional input needed and it goes directly to comments response, or I can send it back for revise to for the creator to make revisions. Okay, so I know we're running out on time a little bit. I just wanted to hit a few more things. So if you're having trouble seeing what your current step is in the workflow graphic, it's also listed right here, current step review. You can also change this filter to show you all steps. So this will show you future steps that haven't been visited yet. Visited steps is the default. Audit log tracks any changes to the record. If nothing's been changed, you won't see anything here yet, but as soon as a field is changed, it will show who changed it, what the field value was, and what the new value is, date and time that happened. And that's pretty much everywhere in the system. Okay, and then I'm just gonna go ahead and undo accept task. Transfer ownership does not transfer a task to someone else, so do not use that. If for whatever reason something got sent to somebody that it shouldn't have, log an issue or go ahead and email us at training and we can take care of that. Okay, and we had a question about comments on the PDF. So if I had a general comment, it will show on the comments tab. But if I had a comment specific to an attachment, you'll actually see it here. So there's a little row here with this PDF and a speech bubble. So speech bubble will show up here telling me I've got comments on this attachment. So there are comments in multiple places. Again, either specific to an attachment or if it's just for the whole RFI in this example, I'll put it on the comments tab. You'll see my comment dropped off because I unaccepted the task, so it didn't save it. Last thing I want to just mention is I just want to show you what one of the Unifier emails looks like when you get it. So this is an email I got for this RFI4 that we created, telling me that RFI4 was sent to me for review. It's got the project number in the beginning, and then at the end, it's got the project name. Typically, we'll include a copy of the form as a PDF, and then any attachments in a zip file. And then it will give you kind of basic information here on who sent it, what it was sent for, if there's a due date. And then you can actually launch into Unifier by clicking this button. Okay, and that concludes our agenda for basic training. As I mentioned, we do have intermediate training where we do go through some additional options in the task view, like taking actions on multiple records at once. We go through e-signature and a few other things as well. So feel free to sign up for that. The only prerequisite is this class right here. If you have any follow-up questions, feel free to email us. If there's anything we didn't get answered in chat, we'll review that and try to send out an email directly. So with that, I am going to stop the recording.